A few months ago during my Christmas stream, I promised you all that you would get to choose the next solo run, and while this took a while to come to fruition due to the birth of my son and me taking some time off on paternity leave, I have finally been able to make this video a reality. And you've guessed it, it's the one you've clicked on right now, of course. Because back in April, I ran a poll on my channel asking you all out of the foremost requested solo run which one you would all rather see, and with 39% of the votes, Marisa came out on top. And I'll be honest, I was genuinely surprised because I thought Naomi would take the crown here. But hey, here we are. Let's see if Marisa, the Crimson Flash, can beat Fire Emblem, the Sacred Stones, all on her own. First off, the rules for these runs, if you're new here, of course, or if you've forgotten from last time, we do this on hard mode. No cheats or glitches are allowed, for the exception of one, which I will talk about later. One healing item per map, unless there is a drop or chest that provides that one extra healing item. The convoy is allowed to grab weapons, but it is not allowed to grab extra healing items, as that would trivialize the run. So obviously there is a reason Marisa won this poll, and it's most likely because she might be one of the worst units in the game. Don't get me wrong, I personally really enjoy this character because I like to use units that are traditionally seen as bad, but she is usually an afterthought of a unit for most playthroughs. But can she be better if she's the one starting the game? I guess we'll see here because the prologue didn't go badly at all. But when we look at the bases, it kind of explains why Marisa might not make a big splash normally on a regular run of Sacred Stones. Outside of her skill and speed, which are good for a level 5 unit, nothing really stands out, especially given she normally joins at the midway point of the game. And to further push this distinction of how lacking Marisa can feel, let's bring her male analog into this whole thing, that being Joshua. If y'all remember the Joshua video, I was really high on Joshua's hope for the solo run, but it ended up being quite a lackluster run in the end due to a bunch of factors that would also affect Marisa, so don't worry, we'll get into those in due time. But comparing both units, Joshua does better than her in literally every stat from base, except for 2 points in luck and 1 in resistance. This makes Marisa quite hard to justify, especially given her very bad con of 5, which means that outside of the Iron Sword and Slim Sword and her quite useful Shamshir, she'll get slowed down by every other weapon from base, and her losing speed is like, you know, just the worst because she relies on that stat like the most. Okay, so with all that being said, surely if she joins this late with worse stats than Joshua, who joins a few maps earlier, she's an est, right? Meaning that her growths are going to blow us out of the water, right? A little bit, I guess. Okay, so again, let's bring in Joshua's growths too, because it kind of contextualizes her not really being an est. And for those who don't know what an est means, it's a archetype in Fire Emblem, which basically just means a unit that joins late with low bases but really good growths. Her strength growth isn't the lowest in the game, so good on that, excluding Tethys, that is, of course. But to give context, the lowest is 25%, so she's pretty close to that front. But it makes sense. You know, she's a speedy sword character, so strength isn't her forte, and she does showcase that with her 55% skill growth and her 60% speed growth, which are great. As a full flip on her strength, they both aren't the highest in the game, but that's just 5% under for both stats. So they're close to being the highest in the game. So it's great, right? And yes, it is, but when you look at Joshua, in comparison, it's not that much more. An overall 5% more across both stat combined for Marisa doesn't really justify her use in the long run. Her luck growth at 50% is really good, and as we've seen in the U-Run run, for a solo run, that can do a big difference. Her defense growth at 15 is pretty low, again, not quite the lowest, but damn near, and 25% resistant growth doesn't look amazing, but in terms of overall in FE8, it's just not really bad, it's kind of okay, giving her the possibility of maybe becoming a weird mage killer. So that's a niche, I guess, but it's not really a useful niche given that sword characters can't really enemy phase mages that well because they don't have range weapons available to them readily, so, you know, I guess that's something. But with all that being said and the early gameplay you've seen, you may have guessed that the start of the game won't be quite awesome, let's say. So something you may have been seeing is, despite me admonishing her bad constitution, I will be giving her Seth's steel sword despite making her way worse, especially against lance unit, and that is because I want to preserve the Shamshir for tougher opponents. And for those who may be wondering why I don't just blow all of my Shamshir uses right off the bat, there are two reasons for this. Number one, it's the only one I get in the game, because I won't be recruiting the Marisa from chapter 10, which is the only other option you get in a Shamshir, since it's a huge detour and makes that map way longer than it needs to be for a single weapon. That's not that great by that point. We'll talk more in details about that map once we get there. The number two reason why I won't be blowing all my Shamshir uses is because if you remember the Eirika run, for those who have watched it, keeping special weapons for tough matchup for low damage sword unit does make life much easier. And that first tough matchup, as you're seeing right now on screen, is going to be Brigette, who Marisa will do 2 damage a pop to with very bad hit rate due to the gate's additional avoid and a terrible weapon triangle matchup in the early game. Suffice to say, we'll need some luck, but before resorting to luck, you'll see that I try to fight him using the steel sword, and you may wonder why I'm not pulling out the Shamshir right away, because it'd be both more accurate and allow me to crit. My goal here is to use the fort to heal up and get a final level up, because I was close to an experience, to maybe get a couple more points in skill, luck, strength, anything that could help me out here to get like a better hit rate, crit, damage. Unfortunately, my plan doesn't work, and on my level 9 I received the great honor of a single HP level up. Gotta love those are fantastic in Fire Emblem. So after another bout of healing on the fort, it's enough. We move to the Shamshir and get rewarded with double crits, followed right away by double miss. But after using up all our vulnerability, we get a little bit more crit luck on our side thanks to the innate 35% crit of the Shamshir, and we get to finish off Brigette to get past chapter 1 with half of our Shamshir uses already gone. So much for conserving them, I guess. But if you thought this video would be a short one, we're already focusing down boss fights on chapter 1 of the game. So get some popcorn, because we're here for some time at least, and hopefully a good time, at least for you guys, because for me this run was a tough one, to say the least. It was something. Okay, so surely this was just a little early Brigette stumble that some units fall victim to, right? It's happened in the past. Nothing new in these runs. Brigette is an interesting first boss for these solo runs. The next map will be easy peasy. It's Sacred Stone's early game, so how bad can it be? Easiest game in the franchise, am I right? Well, yeah, as you said, it is Sacred Stone's early game, so it's not that hard, but something quite interesting will happen after I kill Bone. I'm 7 levels in this run and still haven't leveled strength once. Just Marisa things, am I right? So here I'll do a couple of adjustments. Since I'm never leveling strength, let's try to play on Marisa's other stats, because using the readily available iron swords, we're not one-rounding enemies, which says a lot about her, I think, but we gotta find other strategies to make these maps quicker. And we currently only have 1 steel sword, and the might of that is quite helpful to make up for the damage, but it's not infinite, unfortunately, and we won't be able to buy steel swords right away. So what you'll see me do here is pull out the slim sword. Very rarely in these runs do I do this, but using the slim sword, which has a base crit of 5 with Marisa's good skill and luck, means getting slightly higher crit chance, which in turns means more chances of one rounding, because whether I use the iron sword or slim sword, it will always equal 3 to 4 hits to kill, so I can maximize my crit chance. Then I have better odds to quicken things up, and Marisa will manage to do something truly unique, which is catch a game over on chapter 4. Right at the end of the map, after using all her vulnerabilities, she just gets blown up, because something else that sucks about Marisa is her effective bulk. Yes, she's a phenomenal dodge tank, but unless you're standing on a tile that gives you avoid when at a weapon triangle disadvantage, it's easy to get hit by chunky hits that will slow down the run. And luckily for us and Marisa, chapter 4 has plenty of forest tiles that we can use. But sometimes in these runs, in certain cases, you want to place yourself outside the range to attract more enemies at once to speed enemy phasing up. The more enemies you kill on enemy phase, the less detours you have to do, the more turn and time you save. That's kind of the thought process in a lot of these runs. But here Marisa is quite a weak unit in terms of bulk, therefore there's no shortcuts available to us, and we'll have to do it the long and hard way. And this might also answer the question of sometimes you guys ask in the comment why I'm not using forts or forests or certain tiles more strategically for these runs. Well, that's why. Sometimes it's just quicker to not use them. It's more consistent to use them, but sometimes we don't need to rely on the consistency as much. But with Marisa, we will have to. Moving on to chapter 5, let's take a look at our level 20 Marisa, because we finally reached that point. So when looking at those stats, well, her speed and skill are maxed out as they should be, and I didn't need the skill book, so that's nice. It's something she gets as an advantage. She's up 2 points on luck, which I really like, and her resistance, HP, and defense are average given I use the Draco shield you get on this map. But I know, none of this really matters. What matters is her strength. She only got 9 strength, which means in 15 levels, she only got 2 points of strength. It's pretty embarrassing, really, and it means she's 3 points behind her averages, and I can already see the comments flooding in about how I should just reset here and now, but I won't because I'm very intrigued at how this particular Marisa will work out if she even does. But also, you'll understand a little further when I get to talk about promotions. Her poor strength growth is awful, but not the end of the world. Alright, so we'll be able to clear chapter 5 thanks to the armor slayer we get on one of the houses and make short work of Sar. We'll hold on to that weapon carefully because it will be extremely needed in a few maps from now. So next up is chapter 6, and yes, I'm going through this one map at a time because she's bad, y'all. This early game is awful. And I know that usually I zoom through this one right to Novala and end the map within a couple of turns because by this point with an over-leveled unit and the Sacred Stone's enemy quality, it becomes pretty easy to solo the early and mid game. You guys understand that. I do kind of repeat it every video. I won't take 14 minutes of your day to explain this very obvious thing to you all. I assume you've at least played this game before and you know all that inherently. So if I'm stopping on a map like this one that we usually skip, well, that's because things are a little rougher around the edges here. But also, did you guys know that if you get Novala low enough, he'll move closer to the healers to get healed if they're still there? I didn't know this boss could move before today. I feel so scammed, but also just kind of shows that a situation like this never happened before, and it's something I've never seen in all my Sacred Stones run. This was literally a first on this one. That's why I love making this series. We see these weird little interactions happen here and there, and we learn just weird things about the AI of this game. Anyways, we game over once again, and are reminded the lesson that for Marisa to succeed, slow and steady might win us the race here. Well, mostly in a metaphorical sense. I think it's pretty clear she's not beating any records in this one, but finishing is a win unto itself, especially for her. So I'll reset this time and I'll spend 10 years sitting on that fort until it's absolutely safe to move forward, which will take forever because Marisa does 4 damage to these cavaliers and they have healing AI and they are 2 healers. Fun. So they just keep running back and forth and just making my life hell. But we'll make sure to kill the troubadour as having her early elixir drop might be useful soon enough. Eventually we'll beat this map even if it takes forever. The tedium of this early on is something to note. I think we'll kind of get a reprieve on chapter 7 as we'll move forward and just kind of W key and win. It'll be slightly longer than normal. Of course, it's Marisa, as it takes quite a while to kill Murray. The enemies that normally chase you are going to have time to catch up, kill them, and then fight Murray again. That's also a first. I don't think that's happened before. And you may be wondering if you've watched the Eirika video, why is this early game so much tougher for Marisa, since they're kind of similar-ish units? And the answer is twofold. The rapier gives us a great matchup into all the bosses that Marisa doesn't necessarily have a great matchup into, and Eirika just has better growths generally. She's kind of like Marisa, but with better strength, defense, and resistance, and that matters here. Anyways, moving on to chapter 8. This map will be especially hellish for Marisa since most enemies are lance users with decent enough defense. So either you chip forever with low damage iron sword but retain decent dodge, or you accept the massive loss in dodge tankiness and trade that off for more damage from steel sword. By the way, the steel sword is 10 weight, meaning she loses 5 speed essentially, and that's pretty meaningful for her. Essentially will be a trade-off between doing both strategies whenever one is better than the other. So let's take a look at that, shall we? So our first struggle will actually simply be getting to Ephraim's group to bail them out. As previously stated, everything takes longer with Marisa, and just beating the first group will take multiple rounds of combat, meaning we won't be able to safely move out of that room with the calves before the enemy calves reinforcements show up. Additionally, we then have to fight into an armor knight, which means with a steel sword 5 damage a pop, and that is far from enough damage to quickly clear him. This will mean having to bring the calf forwards into a frenzy of craziness. This map has a couple of pillars for Marisa to use, but they aren't always placed in areas where a lot of enemies can be fought from. So some enemies will go for the calves instead of her, but we'll make sure they stay unequipped to not be involved in the battle. One of the big issues is that we'll also run very quickly through our healing that we brought. So after Kyle and Ford, we will already be out of healing despite having a whole room of night, which we kind of want to clear to get the angelic rope and even using the pillars of the armor slayer, their hit rate will be much higher than we'd like to. Getting rid of them will be quite the challenge. I will manage to clear the room, but have 1 HP left, so I kind of have to go through the rest of this unscathed. And honestly, Marisa will make it quite far thanks to the fake heal coming from upping your HP with the angelic robe. It actually gives you that HP back, so that's always nice. We almost make it past the throne room, but alas, our luck at some point runs out and the soldier takes us out. We'll have to make some adjustments, but that's kind of where this map is challenging. The main issue for Marisa being that the first group that slows you down, and the Room of Night doesn't provide a lot of ways to handle them. Using the pillars, meaning we kind of have to get really lucky. But I will be making one big adjustment. I will drop the vulnerary in place of the elixir we got a few maps ago. It's early for solo runs. We've done it before on chapter 8, but we need the extra healing and we kind of need it now. And even with that change, it won't mean it'll be easy because I'll catch an unfortunate game over on the next attempt too. Really, a lot of this comes down to straight luck, but something I'll end up changing on my next attempt is with the night room, where I'll engage the fight with a steel sword and then move down to the pillars to finish the fight with the first 3 knight, making my dodging odds slightly better. Given the hit rate is low enough, I'll just chip at them with the steel sword. Mostly I'll be sparingly using my armor slayer as I needed for Teardo, but it also makes dodging an even bigger problem, and I'm trying to stick to the 1 healing item rule as much as I can. So we'll have to just hope for some dodge luck here. We'll eventually make it to Teardo, but automatically have to use our final elixir, as we got lucky on the dodging in the night room before and the lance units building up to him. Then I'll enemy phase him from the pillar with the armor slayer. Luckily for us, the use of that 1 angelic robe means we can survive 2 hits from his silver lance, so that's really lucky. So we just have enough HP to be able to attack him right away. We won't get any crits, but get very lucky dodging often and finally hit the final hit to win. And now we can move on to the route split. You may think our troubles are over, but this is your reminder that units that use the hero crest get the latest promo items available, with the first one being available on chapter 10 with Garrick. So hero crest units tend to struggle on chapter 9 and 10. This is a huge reason these units seem to traditionally place very low on the tier list, meaning that they are weaker than others for way longer. That and being sword locked, not being able to counter at 2 range, makes chapters like the one you're seeing on screen right now way harder, since you can't always fight from the forest, because sometimes you just have to step out to fight the purely ranged unit, leaving you exposed for the next round of combat. Because when you're not on the forge, her dodge tankiness is more limited than you'd like, even with the good speed and luck. And that will eventually lead us to an unfortunate game over. But luckily for me, I can retry with yet another elixir, as you get one from Ephraim in the previous map, if you don't forget to empty his inventory in the convoy. We'll also have Orson's silver sword that way, so it's a nice little sword for damage if we need it. And this elixir comes at a nice time, because after this map, we can just start buying them from the shops and just kind of rely on that for the rest of the game. So using your 2 that you get early on the 2 last maps is pretty good for the solo run. This map will then take a lot of patience, as we have to kill units from the forest as much as possible, and mages and archers need to be taken out quickly when they are in range. But that does expose us off of those crucial defense tiles. So it's mostly about moving slowly and with purpose. We'll actually get lucky here, because something I never knew is that when Amelia leaves the map, it's actually her entire group that she spawns with that leaves. I really always thought it was just her, but I guess in the past I've always just killed all the soldiers that spawn with her, so I've never seen this. But the soldiers will just disappear before they get another round of combat in, because yes, Marisa did not 1-round them. This kind of just shows how genuinely ass this character is, because usually those soldiers just die, but here they manage to stay alive long enough to leave. But that saves us some combat and loses us the speed wing for now, but I don't think we'll need it regardless. Her speed growth is crazy good. I'll then get super lucky with a sniper, who I shouldn't have faced at that HP amount. It was a misplay, but I got lucky enough. It's okay. The reinforcements are all down and I have 1 elixir left. And luckily near Binks, to kill the mercs and the archers around there, you have a wood tile, so you can use that to your advantage. Binks, on the other hand, won't be a huge problem. His rate remains low, but our damage against him will almost be embarrassing. But it'll be enough to move on to chapter 10, where if we succeed, we get the hero crest. And once again, I know I sound like a broken record, but Marisa's poor damage will be a problem, because you'll get immediately log jam at the start of the map. This jam will create this kind of weird domino effect where things end up getting so crazy that the Pegasus reinforcements have time to spawn, which again, never happens. Never has had time to happen in these runs. If I want to save my hero crest, I have to fight and save Garrick and rescue him, and usually we can just keep them alive and go to the boss. So here I realize it's futile to keep pushing through this map in this attempt. It'll just way inflate the time and turns out of proportion. So I reset the map where I make a tiny adjustment. I don't push all the way up on our first move, which then forces the mages to attack Ines instead of going for Marisa like last time. And that makes that a slightly smaller logjam because Ines will one round those mages. So I get to fight my way through the gates better. We get some dodge luck from Tethys, which is good because she must stay alive for Garrick to join you, and vice versa. It still takes a long time to get through the onslaught of enemies, but it's slightly more manageable here. Thank God for elixirs. And while the rest of this map plays in the background, let's talk about Marisa's promo, as it will happen right before the next map. Being a Myrmidon, we get two choices for Marisa, either the Assassin or the Swordmaster class. So let's start by looking at the promo bonuses and skills. When it comes to the promo bonuses, the only thing Assassin will provide more than the Swordmaster is a single more point in speed. Frankly, Marisa doesn't need that. Swordmasters get a nice HP boon of +4, +2 strength, and +2 con, which are all not insignificant for this character right this minute. The big difference will come in the skill, the main one being Silencer for Assassin versus Swordmaster getting a free inherent 15 points of crit rates. For those not familiar with Silencer, basically 50% of crits turn into an insta-death, even if the damage were to be 0. The activation rate is halved against bosses, and it can't proc on the Demon King. And this final little caveat is why it isn't great in solo runs. Because the idea of giving high crit weapons to a high skill and luck but low might unit like Marisa sounds awesome on paper, but in practice, while it works for 90% of the game, it doesn't work against the big final boss, and he is the most significant big roadblock for this type of character with low might. On the other hand, the inherent 15% crit is one of the few ways to be able to crit the Demon King in the endgame. The character is really high luck and tends to be a really tough character to ensure crit on, so only a couple of the Sacred Twin weapons and the classes that give inherent crit are able to crit him even a little bit. That list is super limited, and Marisa is part of the ones that can do it. The last thing that will tip the balance is the stat caps. Most of them will be pretty close, but the short of it is that Swordmaster offers a higher strength growth potential. While you can get one more skill as an assassin, also the better res for Swordmaster, but I doubt that will come into play. The one skill would be extremely valuable if you could proc Silencer on the Demon King, but you can't, so it's actually kind of useless because it won't even give Marisa a crit chance against him. While the Swordmaster has a better strength potential and technically a better crit potential despite the less skill because of her inherent crit skill. Yet Marisa is extremely cursed in strength, right? But given the 2 energy ring you get later on this route, it could help balance it all out in the end. But also 22 cap for strength isn't high, so if we get a little lucky on growths, it'll fix that problem. And in my opinion, all the advantages for this kind of run goes to Swordmaster, so this is what we'll do. Following this promo, we'll finally get into the extremely easy portion of the game with the monster map, and we'll get a game over. Okay, so this one's on me. Basically, it's not because we finally get a promo that Marisa is magically a juggernaut. We still have to take it slow for the next few maps as she gets levels under her belt. Using terrain once again to our advantage when we can. And while this makes the run slow and tedious, it isn't a huge deal because immediately on the following map with a few levels, it'll right away simplify quite a lot. We'll start grabbing those stat boosters that we need. Earlier, we got the goddess icon from Tethys. Realistically, the other ones that we do need are only the energy ring from Ewan and the one you'll get later on chapter 14, but the secret book and speed wings are quite obsolete for this run. Marisa will just grow those just naturally. The IS map will be up next, and usually this map is kind of a rush the boss and win, but here we'll run into a slight issue. First, no 2 range weapons, so we can't counterattack half of the enemies here. I mean, there's always a sort of wall in front of us, but the other problem is while Marisa is pretty proficient crit machine, when she doesn't crit, she isn't always one round. This means that we'll just have to spend most of this map surrounded and never make it to IS, so for the first time in a long time, we'll beat this map by waiting it out. Despite my best efforts to try to push towards IS, we literally just can't ever make it and wait out the turns. That never happens. Now with chapter 14, that one will be easy. We grab the energy ring and book it to Carlisle ASAP. Again, a lot of range on this map. So sometimes it's about moving a single tile at a time, but once again, we make it to him. We win the Swordmaster off with a nice crit, and next up is the infamous chapter 15. Let's talk about it. This is the desert map, so our goal will be to grab a bunch of nice goodies from the sand. The usual suspect of boots to increase our move, the constitution, which Marisa will love for the purpose of not getting slowed down as much by some of the better weapons, the worm slayer to make some wyverns easier, but this time we'll also make the Metis Tome detour. But before this detour, we'll make another detour, the Null detour, to say all in unison and love. Bye-bye, no. Bye-bye, you chump. Bye. But yes, we'll go grab the Metis Tome because Marisa arrived at level 15 on the map. So 5 levels of extra growths are, in my opinion, worth the extra 5%, especially to get our cursed strength back to snuff. Good thing about Marisa is her luck is great, so she'll have a really good time with getting the treasures on this map. And we will grab all of them with relative ease. The rest of the map will be quite easy for the most part. Dusel stays alive long enough to get saved, and Kalik basically can't hit Marisa thanks to weapon triangle advantage. After that, Valter will be up, but our newly acquired Worm Slayer will put this dirt bag in the dirt. Sorry, I didn't have a better one-liner here, but we'll move on to chapter 16 and we'll grab our last stat boosters and our level 20, which we'll talk about while the run is in the background. So what does our final Marisa look like? Honestly, all that green is looking amazing. So of course, speed and skill are maxed out, but without using stat boosters for those, so it's still pretty nice. Here we also have luck maxed out, which given the one goddess icon is 2 points above average, and resistance is also technically 2 points above given the talisman we get on this map. So very impressive stuff overall for Marisa with average defense too. Her HP and strength are technically a little down given both energy rings and the angelic robe, but the HP will get maxed out on the final map since we can get another angelic robe. So I'm all happy with this. Being 1 point off of being maxed out on strength with 21 is much better than we were looking earlier. So you know what? I'll take it. She's getting to the point where she's easily running through these late game maps. And yes, technically her strength has been a problem. At least it's at 21 right now, so it's helping out a little bit. After chapter 16, we'll head to the Tower of Viability. And that is because we must make a little detour to grab an item that is only available here to make sure that sword units don't get soft locked. You see, on chapter 18, there are 2 Gorgons that require a ranged weapon to take care of. Unfortunately, there is no naturally occurring ranged sword in Sacred Stone's main story until chapter 19. However, they have about a 0.1% chance to appear on enemy Bonewalker in skirmishes and in the tower. So I have to head to the tower and reset a bunch until I get the one I want. Technically, there is a glitch to ensure a rune sword. If you reset your game as you click the retreat button on your next attempt at the tower, it will automatically give you a Bonewalker holding a rune sword. I made a short about this that you can check out if you're interested in the details, and it's the only glitch I allow for these runs specifically for sword lock units. However, I do add a small caveat to this. Since it can be a naturally occurring event in the game, I have to try to get one naturally for roughly 10 real life minutes before doing the glitch. The reason I added this rule is because it adds a handicap in terms of time to the final time, essentially a visual marker that says this unit can't complete the run unless it needs the glitch, which helps a little bit with the general ranking in the end. And in the case of Marisa, we get very lucky and we don't really need to use the glitch, as after only a few resets, the game grants me my wish and gives me a rune sword. Also, given that it's not obtained in the main story, I'll only use the ranged sword for 2 specific enemies to keep things as fair as possible, as this is what I've done for the previous runs which have used this item. Next up, we have chapter 17. Usually it's pretty easy as I rush Leon, that ends the map, and here it takes a couple more turns because, well, Serene dies too quickly, not distracting these wyverns for long enough, but also because I can't attack the snag over the river, so I need to wait for the mages to take it down for crossing, so it takes an extra turn. I also pull out the Worm Slayer to take care of the wyverns here. It really never is necessary normally, but here quicken things up a bit and facilitates Marisa's damage to allow us to kill these wyverns in a single turn instead of like 2. Once I get through them, I finish off Leon with the Shamshir and move on to chapter 18, which is usually really hard and annoying and happens to be a common roadblock for a lot of units. Oh look, 0% hit rate on stone. Oh, damn, that's really good for Marisa actually. I know we shouldn't be using solo runs to evaluate actual normal playthroughs of Sacred Stone since they don't depict an accurate representation of a unit's performance, but if these runs have changed anything about my general perception of Fire Emblem, is that I now love the luck stat. I've fallen in love with it. It facilitates so many things, man, which also in a weird way makes me despise Null even more. It's neat how sometimes life rewards you in little ways like that. Anyways, moving on. Marisa may have had like the second or third best showing on this map in the history of the series. She is doing her best press MC Hammer impression and no one can touch this. Even the boss is kind of a joke. This is actually one of those weird situations where you'd actually prefer them going for stone over attacking, since like it's 0% hit rate and while the attacking is 11%. The difference isn't major. 11 is very low, but it would still be nice to take 11% less risk, right? And before you say it's normal, Kratos, the AI is being intelligent. No, it's not. The Gorgon is not recognizing 0 and not going for it. It's the way it functions is very different than that. They work in different ways. Like a few Gorgons have different AIs on this map, but the ones that run towards you will only go for stone when it's their only option or when they can get counterattacked. If they can't counterattack, then they'll focus on damage. They seem to hate getting hit. I think that's their like main focus, not get damaged. I think I've talked about this in a previous video in more details in this series. Either way, none of this matters. Marisa wins. On to chapter 19. Where keeping usage of the Armor Slayer proves to be fruitful as we kill the early general. That way he doesn't block our path later, and we can bum rush Reeve right after we grab the Brave Sword. But this map is always quite an easy affair that we end in a couple of quick turns and we can move on to chapter 20. But first, let's go shopping. And I will be buying a stupid amount of killing edges. When I mean a stupid amount, I mean stupid. And we'll proceed to not use many other weapons for the duration of this run with an effective crit rate of about 50 and 65 depending on the enemy. I will run through these monsters on chapter 20, so Marisa's only remaining issue will be the 2 range units, which will still slow us down. Of course, we cannot counteract that at all, but with max speed and luck and no constitution penalty, thanks to the body ring, which is doing some heavy lifting here, everything is going very, very smoothly. Morva will be slightly more scary with a 56% hit rate, but nothing some patience and a few crits cannot solve, right? And we can finally move on to the final chapter. Let's see how things go here. Again, the plan will be the same as last map. Crit, crit, crit. We'll go to the right side, grab the angelic robe first. Is the one more HP going to matter? I don't know, but in the past it has, so I'd rather be safe than sorry personally. Our first real roadblock will be the zombie dragon, and where the matchup isn't awesome, 34 is a lot of damage, but alternatively 48% hit on him is on the lower end of the spectrum we've seen in these runs. So the best case scenario is we get a crit and a dodge, because 28 is not a lot of damage in and of itself. And will you look at that, we get a dodge and a crit. Sometimes you just gotta speak it into existence, I guess. Next up, Leon and his gaggle of Gorgons. And you'll see that I take a more aggressive stance here than I usually do. I don't take care of the spiders first. I just go through them and take care of the 2 that moves while taking care of the Gorgons that move. Usually I would bait out the spiders first and then move forward. But here with our dodge rate being so high, it can win us sometimes to be a little bit more aggressive. As to lose this run on these enemies, it would take us an absurd amount of terrible luck, as some of the hit rates are around 0%. So here I'll try to cut down on turns and time in the later end of the game, but you know, not that it'll matter a lot, but if it can help her time and turns in the end, well, Marisa will appreciate it in the rankings, I guess. And here when going up to Leon, I make a slight mistake. I placed from the top, my thought being to take out the long range Gorgons one after another while still damaging Leon on enemy phase. What I forgot to account for were the evil doggos from the left, and one comes and attacks me at 37% hit rate and hits. It's a huge bummer. However, I immediately get very lucky because my killing edge breaks after he attacks, which forces me on Odolma, meaning I get +5 passive resistance from that Sacred Twins, as that is its skill, meaning I can survive a hit from Leon's 57%, which I wouldn't have had to be able to do otherwise. You may have thought that me doing this was all planned, but no, I just got stupidly lucky, you know? Hell yeah, brother. We still end up dodging, but whatever, man. Like, even if it would have hit, we would have survived with 1 HP, which is awesome. So here I stay on Adalma and Pure Water to take on Leon. I'm kind of really fishing for a crit here to avoid having to use any healing, since I still haven't used 1 elixir yet, and I'd like to keep them all for the Demon King just in case, because yeah, I know he's going to hit hard. But alas, it won't be the case here. I'll have to burn 1 to beat Leon. Marisa's damage is still quite meek, and it made that fight slightly longer than it needed to, but it also scares me for the upcoming Demon King fight, who is no slouch in terms of defense. Let's see how it goes. So let's see. Attack Adalma, 21 damage a pop. We double him, 13% crit rate, 100% hit, so we can't miss. But he has 40% hit rate on us and 36 damage. So if he hits us twice, we die. But we have pretty good dodge rate. We get hit by the first one. We hit both our first attack with no crit. Unfortunate, but honestly, getting hit on that first hit isn't too bad because we can just back it up and heal and then come back in. So keeping our dodges for other hits is pretty good. Here, there's really no problem enemies, so I'll be very happy with that. I will pull out the killing edge once again, just make sure that Ephraim is not in the way of the doggo so he doesn't get killed, because that happens sometimes. But here we'll move out, killing edge, and we'll heal after we're done with all the reinforcements. So I'll just kind of skip ahead. None of them are scary at all, right? Okay, the doggos with 50% hit rate are a little scary, I guess. Okay, the heavy spear guy with 22 hit. Okay, we got lucky, but that could have been really bad. I think the other ones are fine. I think their hit rate is like 0, in all honesty. So I think we could skip ahead. But yeah, I was right. Other than the dogs, the hit rate of every other enemy was 0. But can you believe if my run would have ended on a freaking 22% perfect 18 damage hit? That would have been crazy. But this Revenant dies here. And now we got to do the Demon King. We'll use our elixir. We have 1 left, which is fine, really. We got to hope for a dodge here. So let's go towards the Demon King. Adama again. Let's attack. Let's see here. First attack, hit. Does he hit us here? He doesn't. He misses. He attacks us. Very nice. He'll attack us from range here. Even if he hits, we can go back and heal, so it's not a problem. We dodge it. Marisa's putting on her juke shoes, and let's go for the kill. No matter what happens, we kill here, and we hit. We hit us, buddy. You're dead. And we ended with a crit. Not because it mattered, but for style points. And you know what? If it's for style points, it does matter. This run wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but who watching had Marisa first trying the Demon King? Because better characters have tried and failed, and I wasn't one of the believers. So I was a little surprised here. Of course, we got luck on our side, but that was a nice way to end this run with a nice crit for style points. However, the ending is not the only thing that matters. The run in its entirety must be judged, and Marisa did not have a great run until like chapter 14, where she struggled immensely for like half of the game. Their low strength growth really comes to bite her there, and her stats will kind of tell the story, with her turn being 569, nice, and time being 10 hours and 38 minutes. It's really high across the board, and I think it's no surprise that her and Joshua have similar-ish runs. With Marisa's time being slightly better, she did get the rune sword way faster than Joshua because he needed to use the glitch, and I believe he also spent more time in the desert because his luck is worse, which is where the discrepancies in time happen. However, he has like 37 more turns due to her terrible early game, so it ends up being a case of what you value most, because I think her Demon King fight in chapter 18 were way more consistent and clean than Joshua's. But while Joshua still struggled in the early game, he didn't struggle as much as Marisa did. Let me know in the comments who you think really should go at the top of that tier. I'm curious about your opinion there. But I think for now, I'll keep Joshua there, and the only reason is because technically Marisa had the worst turn count outside of the Lords. And Mulder, who remember spent like 1,000,000 turns in the prologue, so it doesn't really count that way. And while I don't think her run was nearly as awful as anyone else in that tier, especially looking at Garcia and Colm, who had just god-awful runs. And I'm trying to be fair to Gilliam here. He does need a rerun. My original attempt with him was all over the place and suffered from not having enough knowledge, so we're gonna have to rerun that at some point. On that subject, I've already done a Ross rerun and planning to try another Eirika one at some point, but Gilliam will be in that group too. The reruns haven't been updated on the tier list yet and won't be for now. I'm still thinking of how I'll do those videos and account for that in the end ranking, but we'll get to that in due time. We are getting close to the end of the Sacred Stone cast. Only a few units remain, and that includes Creature Campaign. So thank you all for watching the video, and thank you for supporting the channel and the series. It's been a great ride. When I'm done with all these characters, don't worry, I got other plans for solo runs in Sacred Stones, but also, you know, other types of challenge runs across the Fire Emblem spectrum. So don't worry. When this series ends, the channel doesn't end. Do not worry. But don't forget to like the video. I'd like to give you a huge shout out to my Twitch subs and YouTube members, and a huge shout out goes to my tier 2 and 3 members here on YouTube. Those being Brawler456, Forgotten Fox, Hirame, The Wolfman, Storm Eagle CH, Stylish, A Grumpy Bear, Reploid, L Bunker, Faith Kira, Santo Show, Newt of Roses, and Case. Anyways, that is it for me today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.